Hello and welcome back to CHH Hysteria, a podcast for CHH about everything CHH. I'm your host Cole,
I'm your co-host Cooper.
and today we are joined once again by Apex. He's a good friend of ours and an upcoming Christian hip hop artist who just dropped his second album, which is one of the best of the year so far, called Missions and Convictions. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you guys so much. Thank you for calling my album one of the best so far. That means a lot.
Oh, it is for real. But so if you haven't heard that, be sure to check it out after this interview or before, but then come back. But before you get too far, go to Apex. You want to go to this and tell us what MNC is about? There's a lot
Yeah,
to
man.
unpack.
Yeah, man. So Missions and Convictions is more or less the narrative of me finding out about my muscular dystrophy, my life-changing disease, and kind of the mental and spiritual impact that took on me, as well as like kind of walking through bigger issues in life. I feel like a lot of people can relate to one thing or another that they hear in the album, but it's more or less just trying to figure out the balance between what you're called to do and what you're struggling with. You feel me?
So, has this album challenged your walk with God? If so, how much?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. You know, it's funny because like artists, maybe people who are music obsessed measure their life by like music milestones, if that makes sense, instead of like birthdays. So looking back on the last 3 years of my life and writing this album is so interesting to see where I've come from where I started. And a lot of that has to do with like growing spiritually and growing in my trust in God and kind of finding my identity throughout all of the struggles and finding my identity in Christ has been a big an emphasis for me, like very intentionally looking for that and struggling with it. And I feel like by the end of the album process, I've really found myself in a good place there. So it's definitely changed my walk with God, but I would say for the better.
So this album has gone through like a lot of troubles, kind of like you said, and you've kind of been open with that on like Instagram and stuff like that. So can you walk us through some of the troubles that you experienced and how you overcame them?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's funny because whenever I started this album, I was still in high school. This was 3 years ago at this point. And a lot of the reasons why the album changed, like, of course, we had location issues with Odyssey and I not being in the same place and stuff like that. Odyssey executively produced this whole album, for those who don't know, along with myself. But really, a lot of the reason why this album was delayed is because I knew I wanted to do it right. So when I started writing this, it was like a concept, and the concept just had to hit, you feel me? So as I kept growing as a person, I knew that this album had to get bigger and bigger. And also, I wanted it to have like a nice resolve to it, and not just present all these struggles, all these issues, whatever, without any kind of closure. Not saying I've like arrived at who I am, but I think by the end of the album, you get a really good sense of like comfort. And then on top of that, just to be honest with you, why a lot of artists don't drop music when they're supposed to, just like kept getting better on my art and I kept growing. So that came with a lot of changing the album, changing songs, changing verses. Time Zone was one that I rewrote a few times. The intro, of course, as I like said in the album. And then honestly, I think the only concept that stood still from 2018 to when this was dropped is the song Curse. Everything else was rewritten. So just the more that I grew in my craft, the more that I wanted to be intentional that I brought the best product possible to the music.
Um, so when someone sits down to listen through Missions Convictions, what do you want them to get out of it?
That's a loaded question, my guy. I think artists just want people to be able to relate to their music. Um, and so I think someone could come up to me and say, "Oh, this album helped me believe in God again." And then the next person comes up to me and is like, "This album let me know that I need to take my physical health seriously." And both of those people are right because you can't be wrong in how you interpret music, which is so beautiful. But at the end of the day, I think what I really want is just for people to be inspired, and prayerfully that leads to more faithfulness and faith in God and stuff. But at the end of the day, I just want people to relate and feel like you can get through the struggle, you know? I think that's most important, especially right now.
No, I thought the way you first of all the album's fantastic and like all the songs are, I love them all. And then one thing I really appreciated about this was like this whole rollout. I felt like was really like smooth. I mean, I know you obviously had your troubles with Apple stuff like that, but overall
Yeah.
like you had a very good marketing a way of marketing it. And something I was impressed was you chose your singles super well for the album. They all felt like singles, but they also all felt like they belonged in the album. So how did you choose the singles, and then how did they change over time? Like if you had different singles chosen first or
Yeah.
whatever.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. The only single that I was 100% sure was going to be a single initially is Wolves. And that's because it really just felt like it felt different enough to not be copying someone else. It still felt single structure. The issue with choosing singles on this album is a lot of the songs fell out of typical song structure. So we didn't have the intro, the 16, the chorus, the 16, chorus, and the outro, like a lot of the singles that you usually hear on the radio do. Instead, we had this weird like intro maybe 24 bar verse, chorus maybe 12 bar verse, and like it didn't really fit what people were looking for, especially playlist and radio stuff. So I remember Odyssey and I just had like a sit down conversation. I was like, bro, I don't care if people playlist this or not. Obviously, I want that to happen to grow the art, but I just want to be proud of what I make, and I want to be sure that every song that I drop leading up to this album gives you a glimpse of the album while having a full concluded story in it. So Wolves was like no brainer. The second was Vendetta, and Odyssey was kind of against me dropping Vendetta as a single at first until he started to see how my mind was working with it. So Vendetta is like kind of encapsulates the whole album narrative in 4 minutes, and it has the nice resolve in the second verse, which is something that was very hard to find throughout looking through the track list that we ended up with. The third single was 10,000 Ways, which Odyssey pushed me to push as an album single. I wanted it to just kind of be something that you find at the end of an album, like dessert after a good meal, and not be expecting it to be so good. But it was either that or Eric Bledsoe. And Eric Bledsoe, as much as I love that song and I believe that it could have been successful as a single, didn't have the resolve that I wanted and was kind of a weird excerpt of the album when it's not in context. So at the end of the day, we just decided to go 10,000 Ways. I'm super grateful I did because I think that it can go a long way still, and it's already such a powerful song that it needed some time to stand alone.
Yeah, I'm glad you went with 10,000 Ways over Eric Bledsoe as well. Even though Eric Bledsoe is probably one of my, if not my favorite song on the album, it just feels so much better on the album, if that makes sense. So kind of continue on with like this rollout. Also, a lot of things that we don't have with some artists sometimes is like the covers. They all kind of align together. Like it kind of led to the actual cover. Was that like one photo shoot? How did that cover come to be? Like, kind of tell the story behind that.
Great question. Yeah, shout out to my friend Sydney SB Photographs, I think on Instagram. She shot the whole thing, and we did a two-part shoot. So I can try to make it deep and conceptual and say that the first shot was done at dusk to kind of like bring the gritty vibe, and then the second one was done a little lighter to bring the hope. As cool as that is, that would be a retcon. We honestly just needed more time to shoot pictures. Um, but as far as getting the promo photos to lead up to the album, that was always what I wanted. I believe that art kind of should stretch more than a song. And don't get me wrong, I love when artists just drop random songs. Like I'm a huge J. Cole stan, and he doesn't usually do a lot around the art. But to brand it as just an album felt a little shallow considering how deep the subject is. So we decided to make it a multimedia project. So you'll get the songs, you'll get the promo photos, you'll get the blogs on my website. And then I'm also in the process of making a documentary. So we wanted everything to lead up and then present the full story and then be like, now here's how it happened afterwards. So to answer your question, it was very intentional. And the single covers, shout out to Noah Brown, who did the graphics for the album, 10,000 Ways and Vendetta. Killed it, killed it. So we all just kind of wanted it to come together, and thankfully my team was on board with me. Odyssey, Sydney, and then Matt and Aaron, who I got to work with later in the process, were big advocates for me pursuing that.
Yeah, nice. No, I love the whole multimedia approach that you've been doing. It's been really interesting, like seeing like the blog posts, the different like little videos you've been making about it. I think it's super dope and it adds a lot to the album. Like I don't know, but so you say you're working on a documentary. What's that documentary gonna be like, if you can say?
Yeah, for sure. It's gonna be a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Did y'all ever see the Saturday morning cartoons that Andy Mineo used to
I
put out?
did. I love those.
So that deepened my love for music so much and the love for creation. And I always wanted to kind of do that as well as John Bellion has the making of videos, which
Mm.
same thing. Every time I watch those, I get like mad inspired. I'm like, let's go write a number one song. So what I wanted to do is kind of take that and put my own little twist on it and show like, yeah, this is how we made it, but also this is everything that we had to overcome to do it. So I'm like talking about and showing a lot of the issues that we had. Odyssey's on there talking about a lot of the physical things that I had to go through, and it's hopefully it's gonna be pretty moving and received well. But man, making a documentary is hard work, so we'll see how it ends up.
I'm super excited for the documentary. Is that kind of like the end of MNC, or do you have more stuff planned after that?
That's what I have to
Or
see.
oh, okay, sounds good.
So, how did you choose the features for like the different songs? And then were there any features that didn't make the cut?
That's a great question. Um, yeah, so features are a really cool, really interesting thing for me. I think I mentioned on my last interview I did with y'all. Oh, by the way, I meant to say this is my first like album interview, so I'm super excited. Um,
Hey.
but on the last interview I did with y'all for Wolves, I mentioned that Trey's the first person I've had on my music since Perspective. So it definitely wasn't something that I took lightly. I had to find like secret sauce, people to bring the right things to the music. So Trey was the first person who I ended up reaching out to, and he absolutely nailed it. I've been so blessed to work with incredible artists and incredible people on this project, like all around. Um, I spent like time in prayer about who do I want to work with on this album, who do I want to feature, and that might sound a little weird, but I think it's something that maybe more Christian artists should consider doing, because you get. I'm not gonna get into all that, but we had a lot of fun picking the features for one, and then as far as like finding the right fit, I don't think I could look back on this album with any regret. It was something that I really tried not to do. So I was like, is Tyler really who I want on Eric Bledsoe? And he ended up being an absolute banger of a feature, and just kind of stuff like that that worked out. As far as people who were maybe going to be on it who didn't end up on it, there were a few. There's a couple bigger artists, and I don't want to put their business out there as to why they couldn't end up on the album, but hopefully I'll get to work with them in the future. But overall, like features are very fun, and I'm glad that I got to do it again, and I'm glad that I took the time to grow before I did that because it prepared me to choose these features and not just hop on whoever was selling a 16.
No, you brought up Eric Bledsoe. I absolutely love the hook on that. I, you said Tyler's his name. Either way, it's amazing.
T San's his artist name.
Okay, T Say.
He's incredible.
So yeah, moving kind of away from like the general of the album, and kind of more into like specific songs. Another one of my favorite songs. My top two songs are probably Eric Bledsoe and Time Zone. But in Time Zone, one of the first things you said is cook the coffee like crack. I feel like there's a story behind this. Do you actually know how to cook crack? And then also, what's the story?
Okay, I'm so glad that you asked this. I don't know how to. I've never cooked crack. I've never done crack or whatever. But I get the idea of it, you know. So here's this story. Oh my gosh, this is so funny. This is one of my favorite stories ever. Um, I went to Hamilton, which is where Odyssey was living at the time, to record the Anxiety EP in July, August of 2018. And I've been around him before a few times, but I didn't know him super well at that point. And I stayed for like 4 nights, I think, just on his sofa. So he was like super open. And we got to grow our friendship and our bond a lot there. That's where a lot of like even themes you see through this album started. But throughout the course of that, I'm a coffee fanatic. Just want to say I love coffee. Maybe I shouldn't say fanatic because coffee heads who really are coffee fanatics might get offended because I don't know that much. But I love coffee. And Odyssey doesn't love it as much as me. So he was in university, right? And university students are typically broke, are living the broke lifestyle. So he had a Keurig and it had broke like 2 days before I got there. He didn't really care because he wasn't huge into coffee, but I was. And so he was broke, I was broke. I was like, what are we gonna do? So he had all these K cups. And by like the second night, I was just so exhausted because we stayed up forever making anxiety. And I was like, bro, I have a crazy idea that just might work. So we went up to the kitchen and I opened the K cup. I poured it in a little pot and just poured water in it and try to boil it like that. Try to boil coffee out of a K cup. Eventually, we decided to switch to like a spoon, which is where the crack thing comes from. But we ended up with like 2 hours later a successful, very weak cup of coffee. And then we ended up like just mustering up everything we had and head to Starbucks the next day. But it was one of the best experiences of my life.
That sounds so fun. Good memories.
Um, so another like I mean all the songs are really good, but like I really like Just Ignore It. And there is some progression in the song that I noticed. And so in the hook it says just ignore it, act like it's gonna go away. And then in the post chorus at the end of the song, it says don't ignore it. What did this progression look like in your life specifically?
Aggression is a funny word to use there because, like, to be honest with you, bro, I wish that it was some sort of slow progression. So the song is just about like me getting sick or finding out I was sick at least. And I'm an athlete. I was an athlete. I played basketball all the time, and in like typical athlete fashion, I was taught to just kind of ignore pain or embrace pain and just keep going. And that cost me so much. And then like one day at practice, I just like went down to do a burpee and couldn't get back up. And the next thing you know, I'm like, dang, and the ambulance. So I really wanted this song to be more of a message to people. It's like, don't ignore something if you think that it's wrong. And that doesn't have to be physically, it can be, but like mentally, if you're starting to feel weird, address it. Be like, why am I starting to feel weird? Or spiritually, if you feel like you're starting to drift, address it. I'm not saying that it'll always change the end result. It will definitely better prepare you for the end. So progression is like a funny word. I'm glad that you used it.
No, I just love that. Like admitting something is like the first step to healing from something. I think that's dope. Like, and that song really shows it.
Thank you, bro.
So then in Hearse, another line that I caught, so you say, I'm praying in the church more times than not, but it's only getting worse more times than not. What does this line mean, and is there a story to this line?
Yeah. Good question. So, Hearse as a whole is one of my favorite pieces of art that I've ever made. I know it's not like a fan favorite by any means, but I love it because the goal of the song was to present the feeling of anxiety in the most transparent way possible. So it's like a lot of what you're saying and doing is contradicting itself. And there is the tie into like literally me praying in a church and I wasn't getting better. But more so is the overall concept of like, and no matter what we try or how we try or whatever, sometimes it just feels like things aren't getting any better. And so the whole album kind of boils down to that song, and you could say even that line as kind of the breaking point in the story. Which I know you have a question about the track listing up, so I won't get too far into that. But um, the line was very intentional, even if it wasn't like super introspective for me. I just wanted people to realize, like, yeah, we all feel like that sometimes. We all feel like no matter what we do, we're not doing it right.
So on Eric Bledsoe, Eric Bledsoe is a basketball player, which I only know because of you. So kind of what's the story behind the name? Like how did you choose it? All that stuff.
Man, good question. So this is one of the few times I've chosen a name before I wrote the song. So Eric Bledsoe, for those who don't know, is like a point guard in the NBA, and he was in a weird situation in Phoenix, and he just tweeted out one day, "I don't want to be here," and it went like a sports viral, if you will. And everyone was like, yo, look at this. Because he's like, no one's ever requested out of a team from Twitter before that. So it was like a big deal. And it's kind of remained a thing, like it remained a joke. But the story for me was like when I first immigrated to Canada, I was here, I was not a citizen, I was going through all that. And then on top of that, I was getting sick. And on top of that, I was living in a basement. So I was like, I just don't want to be here. Then I was like, Eric Bledsoe, and a light went off. And that was a idea that I kept tucked away for a long time. I wasn't sure where I was gonna put it, like as far as if I was gonna actually release it on an album or not. And then and I think 2019 I decided, yo, this would fit great on Missions and Convictions. So that's where the song came from, and that's kind of why it's placed there.
Nice. So yeah, another thing that you said on Eric Bledsoe that kind of caught my attention was they asked for 10% each. Is that the manager or pastor? Because they both stole from me. Are you talking about a specific time here, or kind of what you're talking about? And then also on "God of Love," which is the outro, you said, "Pastor said I'd go to hell. Look at me now." Is like, are you talking about a specific pastor, or what's going on here?
Right? No. Kind of. So on Eric Bledsoe, I'll talk about that one first. Never had a manager, right? So that line is, by the way, if you do get a good manager that only asks for 10%, run with them because that's crazy. But that line, I thought just kind of more so like sounded really dope. But then it is kind of deep because never had a pastor steal from my wallet or whatever. But I'll tell y'all a quick story. For the sake of disclosure, I won't say any names. But one pastor I had at one point ended up doing like terribly criminal things, terribly sinful things. And one thing he did that was like one of the lesser offenses, if you will, was he would say that he was collecting love offerings to replace the roof. So he got like 6 figures and just dipped with it. So that's kind of like that's kind of the tie-in there. It's like yeah, pastors do steal money sometimes. And then for God of Love, like I don't have anything against pastors. I know like some Christians do, and that's their thing. But um, I've been kind of in a weird position with one or two or three, and this one told me that I so I told him that I was changing my diet to kind of um, better adjust my inflammation and my pain levels and stuff. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna try a vegan diet. And he was like, well, Word of God says if you don't eat meat, you're going to hell. I was like, no, the Word of God doesn't say that, but okay. And so he came back a few minutes later with his iPhone out. He had been on Google, and he was like, look at this. It's one of the 13 letters. I think it was First Corinthians was where I was explaining to the people of the church that the animals have been made clean for eating. And I was like, yes, but that doesn't say you're going to hell if you don't eat them. So it was a funny thing for me, but I included it because I thought that it would be a really nice attention grabbing line. It kind of sits well with the whole outro of the album.
Dude, that is crazy. I've heard a lot of Christians fight over salvation stuff. I've never heard a Christian claim that eating meat is a part of salvation.
It was so
That's
funny, bro.
wild. But no, that's just wild to me. After Eric Bledsoe, you have King's Interlude, which is kind of an interesting spot on the album.
Four.
Because like Vendetta. Oh wait, is it Vendetta, King's Interlude, then Eric Bledsoe?
Mm.
My bad. So yeah, like Vendetta and then King's Interlude and Eric Bledsoe. And like Vendetta, Eric Bledsoe, more vulnerable tracks like lyrically and stuff. And then King's Interlude is kind of like, I don't know. Like, is there? Can you kind of talk us through your thought process of why you placed it there? Because I know it has a reason.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So kind of the whole dynamic of this album I wanted to show was um, the idea of having to kind of pretend like you're okay when you're not. Because that's like what I went through, and I know so many millions of people go through that too in different ways. So I wanted to present it in a really cool, fun, conceptual way. So throughout the album, I have like these really deep, introspective songs, and then I have these like highs. So King's Interlude is one, and Zone is one even in a way that's like Time Zone is cool, fun standalone track in its own right, but in the context of the album, it's like glorifying something that's a struggle for you in the same way King's Interlude is for me because a lot of this album has been like me fighting to get right spiritually and stuff. And King's Interlude, I think I put in my Genius annotations was like the look at me, I'm a poster boy Christian rapper talking about Jesus for 51 seconds, and then all of a sudden it's just that deep string intro to Eric Bledsoe, and it's like, yo, that's completely jarring because that's what life was for me for so long. It's like trying to put on the display of like, yo, I'm okay, not necessarily because I wanted to, but because of the circumstances around me, and then learning like it's okay to be honest, which you get to in 1,000 ways and stuff. So, yeah, definitely a very intentional decision to sandwich it between, like you said, two of the more vulnerable tracks on the album. Good question.
Yeah. So I didn't have this down as a question, so maybe you don't. But like, um, it just makes me wonder. Like, did you go through a lot of changes of like how you ordered the tracks, or is it pretty set in stone, like from the get go?
Um, Wouldn't say we went through a lot of changes, but we definitely went through changes. Like there's tons of well, going back to when I started this, absolutely, because only one or two songs ended up going through the three different iterations of this album. But starting like say a year ago, May 2020 was when I was really like, okay, this is how this is gonna go. Probably went through three or four different changes, and then had to cut a song that just didn't really fit. We cut a different things here and there. So I don't know. I would say not a lot, but we definitely thought about it more than maybe most artists do.
Yeah. So going back to like just like the track listing of how you have that roller coaster you're kind of talking about. You told me that like King's Interlude through Hearse is kind of that roller coaster. It has a lot of different emotions and a lot of different sounds. Like, what does that roller coaster look like to you? You kind of explained it, but yeah, go ahead.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I really should have just said from like Act 2 to Act 12 is a roller coaster because the intro sets up the narrative, and then everything else is the story. Right. Yeah, like I said, we were looking for fake highs and stuff that can be conveyed as a feeling of like better than I am. But you look at like Just Ignore It through Gotta Love, and the first two songs is about like a progression with my sickness. And then it's like Vendetta starts to be like, yo, this is affecting me mentally. King Samuel was like, no, I'm good. Air Bledsoe's like, no, I'm not. Steadily improving is when we start to turn around a little bit. It's like, maybe I can embrace this. Maybe I can get this to be used to my advantage. Then Time Zone's like, uh, I'd rather just pretend like it's not happening. And then hers is like, shouldn't have done that. This is where it's all coming to light and finally being honest with myself. And then 10,000 Ways is where I'm like, oh, I can't do this on my own. I can't do this in the time zone way. Only way to feel like whole again, feel peace, is by the love of Jesus. And so from 10,000 Ways, and Jay Connick has such a pivotal verse. I don't think people realize it enough. His verse meant, okay, I see this love that God has given me and has poured into me. Now I'm gonna take that to everyone. We gotta love everyone. So how do you is where it's like, thank you for this love, and kind of like an exchange between God and you, just worshiping and loving, and then God of love, you get to take that love with you the world, the Great Commission, love God, love people, not one is greater than the other. So it's definitely super intentional. I don't know how many people pick up on it, but hopefully more than not.
Yeah, I love it. Like it tells a story and it has like kind of not like necessarily an end, but like has an end. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, I love that. And you brought up 10,000 Ways, and that was one of the singles. I loved 10,000 Ways. It touches on a lot of heavy subjects such as like depression and racism, which can be pretty like polarizing at times. And then like many times when an artist releases a track that touches on some of these subjects, they get a lot of flack or hate. Did you receive any of that?
Um, I was prepared for it a little bit, but honestly, not as much as I thought I would receive, which I'm very thankful for. Maybe it's just because like not a big artist yet, but I mean, there's definitely some people that were like, are they hearing about this or whatever. It's like this isn't Christian enough. Get those messages, and all you can do is shrug it off. But like the fact that 8, 9, 10 people message me and like, yo, this song made me cry. That's enough to make all those other opinions invalid and just be like,
Mm.
thank you, God. I was obedient, and hopefully, like, if I do everything on my end, then that's all I can do, and people can either receive it and rock with it or not. So, um, wasn't that much hate, thankfully. We'll see. The song's still pretty fresh. The album's still pretty fresh. So, we have time to be hated yet, boys.
Oh man. Yeah, no, I'm glad that you were prepared and also I didn't receive much. And then did you actually get like people messaging you saying that like made them cry?
Yeah, yeah, man. And it's like amazing, bro. God is so good because like I've said since I've started this thing when I was 10 years old, all I want to do is like help one person, impact one person. And I've had multiple people message me after this album and said that it like changed their life. And that's crazy. And that honestly that's another reason why I delayed the album because I knew like, okay, this is cementing me as like a Christian leader, and I've seen all too often Christian leaders fall because they're not prepared enough for those kind of messages. And it's crazy thinking about how God works and moves things. Like I'm getting chills talking about it, but um, yeah, yeah, man, I'm so thankful for it all.
Yeah, no, it's crazy that you're already getting people, that are impacted by your music. Just imagine when you have like 10 times the audience, what are you gonna be able to do? That's crazy. Well, God will be able to do it.
Easy.
I should say it like that. But
Absolutely.
so staying on 10,000 ways, you have a line in there that also caught my attention. It says, "I'll give up my addiction if you swear I'll get through it." Was there a specific addiction that you were talking about here? Is it just kind of like a general sin, or?
Yeah. No, there's not really an addiction I can pinpoint, but I knew that a lot of people would relate to that. So, like, obviously, there's things that I struggle with. There's sin, that, like, in humans are inherently good because we're made in the image of God, but we're also inherently evil because of the fall and sin nature in our heart. So there's always going to be that struggle. It's like, and God has given us so much already, but we're so reluctant to not give Him everything. So it's like, okay, if you promise this, then I'm good with this. So even though it's not a specific addiction for me, it might be for someone who listens, or it might be, whatever. So I really wanted to word it that way and include it that way, and I'm really glad that I did.
Yeah, no, I love how you made it like not like you made it kind of broad. So like if someone, let's say anyone's struggling with anything, can kind of relate to it. That's super dope.
For
Um,
sure.
and then how do you, which is the last song, well, not the last song, second last song, um, but also probably one of the fan favorites. I would say it's one of my favorites. It's placed really well in the album. You've covered like a lot of different thoughts and struggles, and now you're worshiping. Is that kind of a picture of your last few years? And then like, what does this song mean to you personally?
Mm. Yeah, this song means a lot to me. I'll tell you how it kind of got started. I was in just my closet in my old room, and I was just thinking. I was just talking to God, and I was like, man, you really love me like that. Like, you really love me like that. Like, how? How do you? How do you love me this way? How do you, like, I'm terrible. Like, my lowest of lows are awful. You love me anyway. Like, so much so that Jesus came down to die for me and resurrect again. And it's just like, I had this crazy moment that I think um, everyone who's saved has had to some extent. So I was like, man, this has to be a worship song. And here's the cool part. I've been wanting to do a worship song for years, and I posted on my Facebook when I was like 13, maybe 15. Want to do a worship song. Everyone was like, do it, but I wasn't ready, and I didn't know how and all that. So I was like, I'm not gonna do a fake worship song, that's for sure. So we waited till it was the perfect time, and then I felt moved to do it. And another reason why, like the reason that I kept the question mark at the end is because like still don't know. I don't know the answer. Like, how does God love me so much? And I think by kind of leaving that, at least for me, it shows it's okay to not know the answer as long as you accept this is happening.
Nice. Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. Love that song. That kind of brings us to pretty much the end of the questions we had, but I have a few bonus questions. Um,
Okay.
so I'm just curious, what songs did you think would perform the best? And like, were you right? Were you wrong? Like, were there any surprises? Like, wow, I did not expect that to do as good as it did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's still very early, so this could change. But
Right.
the songs that I thought would perform well, um, obviously Wolves, 10,000 Ways. I wasn't sure about Vendetta, um, and that ended up being one of people's favorites, which I'm super grateful for because that was very new for me to be, at least for like, it's weird to say like with this platform, like I've grown so much, but low key, I have since anxiety um, with like the listeners. I don't know. I don't want to say fans. It's just so weird. The listeners that I picked up since Revenge of the Sith, till Missions and Convictions, has it's all been off of like happy songs, happy-ish songs. So when I dropped Vendetta, I was like, I don't know how people are gonna respond, but thankfully people really liked it, and I'm glad because I really liked it. And then the other song that I thought would be pretty successful is Time Zone, and actually hasn't been the top half of the album as far as streams go, which I'm kind of surprised
Wow.
about. It's more of a summer song, and summer's here now, so we'll see how it goes. Um, Also, we have some things planned for that song, so I'm sure that'll give it a push. And
Hey,
then songs that performed better than I expected, besides Vendetta, the intro has um, been played quite a bit. And I don't know if that's just because people started the album, they're like, I'm a dip out, or if people just really liked it. I love the intro. It's probably my favorite intro ever. I don't know if Premonitions is up there as far as like stuff that I've done, but glad that people enjoy it.
yeah, I love the intro too. I think the intro is a very good intro um,
Thank you.
to the album. Super good. Um, so, is there anything that we didn't ask you that if you were us, you would have asked you? I mean, I kind of asked you this personally, but was there anything else?
Right. Guess maybe here's a question that I've gotten a few times. So why is Odyssey and the promo pictures and stuff?
So why is Odyssey in the promo pictures?
Yeah. So one person, Sai, actually messaged me and was like, every time I see Odyssey in your promo pictures, I think he's like your guardian angel. So that's not it, but that's pretty funny. um, Basically, it was like I couldn't have done this project without him, and I wanted to create a little world for my community, for my listeners to kind of dive into whenever you think about missions and convictions or whatever. So we decided to have him as a background character both in the promo pictures and then also in the album. So you'll hear little interludes, little like 3 to 10 second clips of him and I talking. And some of those are actually pulled directly from the documentary. So it'll be really cool for people to go back and see the Easter eggs. But uh, I just really, honestly, bro, I wanted to give him his flowers because he's like an incredible artist and producers don't get as much attention or credit as they deserve. So I wanted to do that in a really cool conceptual way. And I totally get why some people don't get it.
No, yeah, Odyssey killed it. He did really good. I love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, where can we find you on your socials for our fans?
Yeah, man. I'm at Apex Fraizer everywhere. APEX FRAZIER. I'm most active on Instagram. Doing a merch giveaway right now. It'll probably be over by the time this video is out, actually. But I do giveaways sometimes, so I'll be there. And then my YouTube channel is gonna be popping this summer. That's where the documentary is coming out. TikTok, whatever. Discord, part of the community. Then my music is everywhere under the same name.
Yeah, we'll be sure to put all those links below. Be sure to join Apex's Discord server. He's super active there. Super nice community there. As
Good
well,
people.
for sure, and as well, we're doing we're doing a giveaway at 100 subscribers as well. So be sure to subscribe, as well as comment your favorite songs from MNC and different things that you have for Apex. Yeah, until next time.